I'm excited about this. I appreciate y'all letting me. I was a Scoutmaster for special needs scouts for 31 years. And I told Larry I'd like to show my patches. So he said, put a program together. So I'm doing it. And I hope I don't get too bogged down into boring stuff, but I'm going to try to keep it moving. Okay, presentation for scouting patches and ranks and requirements for scouting with disabilities. I'm going to start off by showing you some literature. I've got 4 slides quickly about literature, how scouting started helping out special needs boys. And this first one is from the 60s, and they called the young men back then handicapped. So in the early years, goes a couple of decades, they called them handicapped. And this is the resource manual that I obtained from the 60s. Into the 70s, they came out with a little bit more literature, but they still called them handicapped scouts. And you can see one of the literatures from the ARC talks about being helpful to mentally retarded boys. And that's what they called them in the 70s. In 1978, BSA came out with this nice pamphlet, Scouting for Mentally Retarded. Now, right now, the community calls it the R word because the term retarded is actually a medical term, and it's okay to say in the medical community, but it was used as a derogatory term for so long that this group of people do not want their children called that anymore. So it's the R word, unless you're a doctor or somebody in that field. But Boy Scouts, of course, in 78 did a nice little pamphlet on it. In the 80s is when I got started volunteering in the Boy Scouts as a scout leader, and was able to jump into disability scouting. And this is the program that they started in the 80s to make the requirements a little bit easier for the young men to earn some badges, because before it was a whole lot difficult for them to earn some badges. So this is the crux of my program. Will be talking about this program, which is actually no longer in use in the 2000s, but it's an exciting program that we had for a couple of decades. And this is the little badge book that I'm going to be talking about, where they recorded all their requirements and how they passed them off. And in the 2000s, this is Scouting for Youth with Disabilities. So you can see that they changed the name from handicapped and retarded children to youth with disabilities. And if you look right here in this picture on the cover, you'll see my troop made the front cover of this because I helped put together this manual. And in 2007, they came out with this guide for working with scouts with special needs, which is a nice way of calling these young people with disabilities. And it says and then capitalize abilities, because all people have some kind of abilities. And here's what I'm going to talk about today is the different requirements where special needs scouts could go from scout rank to tenderfoot to second class and first class by earning these little badges called segments. And this is where they started in the 80s and went into the 90s with these requirements. You might remember the Cub Scouts also had these things called segments. They had them for a decade or so until they realized parents hated sewing on these tiny little patches. Plus the Cub Scouts lost them anyway. They were so small, and they've gone to belt loops now. But they were kind of colorful and neat to collect. I've collected them all. To get back to special needs scouting, here's an example of the little booklets that we have. And then inside it is where the young men passed off the requirements and got them signed off. So here's the first badge. Y'all recognize the scout badge from the 80s, the really colorful little patches. And the first requirement, the 2 requirements that they had to pass off was the symbols badge and the ideal badge. The symbols badge is the little Boy Scout sign, and then the ideals badge is the 12 for the 12 laws, and then of course the Scoutmasters Conference, and they've earned the scout rank. Getting to tenderfoot, this is interesting that they have the Scout Ideals badge, which is the 12, the number 12. They have that as a requirement on every single badge. So they keep re-earning that badge to earn the next rank. And then they had to earn the flag badge, the citizenship badge, which is a Liberty Bell, and the hardest badge of all, the knot tying badge. And then a Scoutmasters Conference, and they've earned their tenderfoot. The next is second class, and it's, you see here again, they had to learn the Scout Ideals badge, which is the 12 laws. And then they added the camping segment, which is the little tent, the hiking segment, which is the little footprint, the cooking segment, which is the cooking pot, and the first aid segment, which is the Red Cross. And y'all might remember the old skill awards, the belt loops. And so to earn second class, they had to pick one of the skill awards to earn. And I picked the swimming one for this person that earned their second class badge after their Scoutmasters Conference. And then the highest rank that the special needs program has is this first class badge. After first class, they go on to the regular Scout book and earn the Star and Life and Eagle if they're able to, doing the regular requirements. But for the first class, of course, they earn the Scout Ideals badge again, the 12 patch. The swimming segment is the last of the 10 segments that they've earned. And then we fill in the badge that they earned back in second class of the skill awards, which was swimming. And they have to have these 3 required skill awards: camping, citizenship, and first aid. And they have to earn 1 merit badge, and they have to teach a camping skill, and they have to do a leadership project. So I had all the boys do very simple leadership projects for them to pass off the first class badge after a Scoutmasters Conference. And there's my skill award collection that I have for the old skill awards from the 80s and 90s. And here's the back of the little booklet that shows the name of each segment. And for the next 10 slides, I'm going to describe or show you what the requirements are for each segment. So you'll see how simple the requirements were for special needs Scouts. The very first symbols badge, they just had to recognize the Scout sign and recognize the Scout salute, and they recognize and give the Scout handshake. And they have to identify the Scout emblem for the second requirement. So for identifying the Scout emblem, I would lay down a whole bunch of different emblems, the Girl Scout emblem. Hopefully they wouldn't pick that one, but they would choose between those. And of course they would pick out the Scout, the official Florida Lee Scout emblem, to earn this segment. The next is the Ideals segment, which is the one that they have to earn all 4 times when they're earning their different ranks. And that is repeat with others. That's important that it says with others, the Scout oath, the Scout law, the Scout slogan, and the motto. And you know that that's the requirement for all Scouts, but in this case, they can repeat it with others. So some boys don't have the communications that other boys have, and with others, we just realize that they are saying what they want to say when they're saying the Scout oath. And repeating the the outdoor code with others is the second requirement, and knowing what it means. And you see right here the words if possible, and up here if possible, what it means. And we help them realize what these things mean before we pass them off, but they earn the ideal segment doing these 2. Moving on to the flag segment. They have to recognize the American flag. So I have several flags from countries and states, and they point to the American flag and they pass that one off. Coloring the US flag correctly. And I've got a page coming up later showing the coloring page that I have where Scout colored the US flag correctly. And with another Scout folding the American flag, which is always fun for them to do. And all Scouts learn to do that, and show how to pay respect to a U.S. flag at a color guard ceremony, and repeating the Pledge of Allegiance with others. So that's a fun segment that they all like to earn. The citizenship segment with the Liberty Bell, with the parent or the troop, and our troop, we would go to the fire station. That's the favorite place for them to go to. Or we actually had the fire truck come to the school where they would go out and get to do the siren and climb all over the truck and everything to pass off this requirement, and recognize the national anthem and stand and salute or hand over their heart if they're not in uniform during the national anthem. Now, one time in passing this off, I actually had a teacher from the school sing the national anthem, which is kind of exciting for them to learn that they had a teacher with that talent. But most of the time I just had a recording of the national anthem. And the requirement 3, they had to recognize a famous American. And of course, they always wanted to pick me as their famous American. And I told them, no, I'm not a famous American. We had to pick from the list that I had, which is usually George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or Martin Luther King or somebody respectable in American history. And they would get that one passed off. And then the last one, you know, the Boy Scouts always want to teach Scouts the dangers of drugs. So this says that they're discuss the dangers of taking pills or medicine without permission from a parent, Scoutmaster, or their doctor. So that is the citizenship segment requirements. This is the hardest one, the knot tying, for all of them and even for me sometimes. But the first one is the simple little overhand knot. And the second one is tying 2 ropes together with mostly with the square knot. Now you can teach and teach and teach, and they finally get it. And of course, maybe 5 minutes later, they couldn't do it, but you still passed them off because they did it first. And then the third one is they get to pick 2 from these 3, and the clove hitch and the 2 half hitch is usually ones that we pick and show them how to do and help them tie it. Moving on to the camping one, which is one of the most fun ones to pass them off on. The very first requirement is that they present their gear and everything for going on a camping trip. And then actually going on the camping trip, they get to pass that off. And the last one is to pitch a tent and sleep in it overnight. But this is a fun one. I often took them on camping trips, camporees, and of course, summer camp was the highlight of the year. The hiking segment is fun. And oh, looky there. My signature is passing off these 3. The first one is just to take a safe, or what to do on a safe hike. And then we actually take a 5-mile hike. And that even includes the young men in wheelchairs. We would go someplace on a paved path, and there's a couple of good places around that have wheelchair accessible hikes. It's hard to find a 5-mile one, but I have a few that are around here. And or we just do the sidewalk around town to get a young man in a wheelchair to get his 5-mile hike in. And then after doing that requirement, they tell us what they saw and observed on the hike. Moving on to cooking, which is always a fun one for all Scouts. The first requirement is building a fire. So that's a fun thing to teach them how to do. And then they have to prepare a breakfast and another meal on a camping trip. And they also have to learn how to clean up and wash dishes and dispose of the waste and put out the fire, of course. So those are the 3 requirements for them to earn their cooking segment. First aid, they always like to do that, especially putting the bandages on their Scoutmaster. They would wrap my head and my knee and my hand and my foot and put a sling on me, and they'd have a fun time just wrapping me up. But the first requirement is just the simple scratches and burns and bites and stings and nosebleed. And the last one is about learning how to stop bleeding, serious bleeding in a hurry case. So those are the 4 first aid requirements for them to earn that segment. And the last one is the swimming segment. And the school, that the special needs school that these young men are in actually has a swimming pool. So I take them to the pool every once in a while, teach them the buddy system, of course. And a lot of them can swim the 50 yards, but a lot of them can't. But we even have a way to access the young men in wheelchairs down into the water. And of course, their chair doesn't go in the water, but they go in the water and they can do a little bit of swimming around. And then understanding and showing simple life-saving things like extending a pole or throwing a rope and things like that. So they always like going to the pool and earning this segment. And this is a way that I came up with displaying their rank, because we actually keep their scout shirts at the school. It's on a hanger in the closet. And when scouts start, we pull out their shirts and they have these on their shirts, and their names are hanging on this with the button. And then I came up with the idea of taking the segments and wrapping them around their name. So for a first class, it would actually go all the way around. So, but most of the boys, I added this on this week, but most of the boys, they have their segments that they've earned at home with them. Here's the coloring the American flag that I was telling you about, that requirement for the flag segment. One thing I learned after doing this is that only about half the guys could actually do this. So I came up with a better idea later on for the other guys that couldn't do this, is I would cut red strips of construction paper and a blue square of construction paper, and they would actually glue the strips down and glue the blue down, and I'd give them little star stickers and they would stick them on the shield there, and then that would satisfy that requirement for the ones that could not color within the lines. Of course, most people can't color within the lines, but some of them it's just a scribble across, and I wanted them to have something proud of, so I came up with the idea of the red strips and the blue shield. Here's some of the patches that I've collected over the years. Of course, this is an armband that I've worn a couple of times on my arm when I've been out with the boys. And this is the Six Flags has a camporee annually, and this is the 21st annual camporee, and I've taken them there to this camporee probably a dozen times, but this one was a disabilities awareness camporee, which was really nice. So I threw that into my presentation to show y'all. And Disability Awareness Challenge, this is the program at the National Jamboree. They've had it at several jamborees in a row, and this is the 2013 National Jamboree. And this is the patch that you earn after you go through that Disability Awareness Challenge. And this is a new kind of logo that they have for the Disability Awareness Challenge group. And you will see that logo coming up in a slide or two. So remember that logo. This is a patch that I collected from a special needs camporee that I liked what it says on it. It says unselfish and in service and devotion to the welfare of others. I'm sure most of y'all know where that came from, and you've heard that many, many times and probably said it many times. And then these two patches I've ordered recently from a scout in Canada that was selling these as a fundraiser for his project. It's not called Eagle Project in Canada, but it's for his highest rank project. And I bought two of them to help his fundraiser, and it's an autism awareness raise the flag project that he had there. And he sent me a really nice note for getting two of his patches. And IDIBAP, one of the lodges in North Carolina, central North Carolina, based out of Statesville, did this really nice flap for autism awareness. And I really liked the patch, so I included that in my presentation. And this is a tie tack that that Boy Scouts produce, and I was able to get a lot of them, and I give these to adults that help me. You realize that in a special needs troop, it takes a lot of adults to run a troop, because many of the boys, it takes one-on-one, and this is what I usually gave to the adults for helping out. This was a surprise. The Boy Scouts of America put this ad in a national magazine. I'm sure most of y'all have heard of U.S. News and World Report magazine. I'm not sure if it's still available, but this was a page out of it where they did a advertisement for Scouting Timeless Values. And you see that they have all of the Scout laws. If you look here in the middle, there's a picture of my troop under Courteous, which I thought was a nice surprise that the National used one of our pictures when we modeled for the Special Needs Scouting Group. And we also modeled for the BSA handbook. Here's a picture from one of the pages in the handbook. And this is a picture from the Scoutmaster's handbook on this side. So we made it in the handbook and the Scoutmaster's handbook. And here's my uniform. You see the Daniel Boone Council on the sleeve, and I've got a couple of knots, but I wanted to show you this special knot that BSA has come out with recently. It's the Scouting Service Award. And when you earn that, you earn a little pin that goes in it that depicts which service award it is. So they have several service awards. And this is the logo that I told you to look for earlier that was on the Scouting Challenge, Disability Awareness Challenge at the Jamboree. This is that same logo that BSA put on this pin. And this pin depicts that it's the Special Needs Scouting Service Award. And you see that I'm proud of it. I have it at the very top near my Eagle Scout rank. And this is the last slide that I have to show you. This is a picture of my troop at the time when they were taking the pictures that we were modeling for the disability awareness literature that BSA was putting out. So I hope you liked the presentation. One thing I wanted to tell you is they don't do the segments anymore. Now a special needs scout has to do the actual same requirements. Now it's up to the scout leaders that are passing them off, either the merit badges or the ranks in their troop, on how well they want to bend the scout book, bend the rules, if per se, that the young man knows what he's doing or young woman knows what they're doing to earn the ranks from here on out. So they don't want to let them get by getting to first class with those easy ones anymore, which I think is a shame, but that's their decision. It was a big committee's decision in the 2000s to change it to where they have to earn the regular badges now.
To that, I'd like to contribute a comment. At one time, I collected English language scout handbooks, and I was really impressed by Australia. Each rank did not have a set of concrete requirements. They had general goals. And as the scout approached that rank, he would sit down with the Scoutmaster and work out a series of requirements for him that challenged his skill level, whether physical or mental. So each rank was custom tailored to each scout.
That's a really good way to do it. I like that way.
That's a lot of responsibility.
What was the achievement 1, tenderfoot achievement 1 and achievement 2 badges of the late 1930s and 40s? Was that related to people with disabilities and you know,
I'm not sure. I wasn't alive in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, it was an achievement program. That's right. And
Yeah. Well, that's in terrible shape, Al. I just don't.
just to show you, this is my collection of
Oh
them.
my God.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
There were a few different pins, and usually the pins are found with red enameling, but some have purple enameling. And during World War II, they had paint instead of the enameling. So this is my collection. The only other thing I want to share with you tonight, these achievement things that went around the belt, originally they were thinking of using stickers and putting them on metal loops. And I have several of the prototypes. Okay.
Wow.
And they're all on stickers. I only have 1, 2, 3, 6. I have 9 different ones. I never got more of them, but I picked them up when I worked at National. Hold it 1 second. Let me take out of the plastic sleeve. Okay. This is a tenderfoot achievement. That came first. Okay, then achievement 1,
Okay,
and
that's
then
what Vivi's
achievement
showing
2.
us.
And this is an
Yeah.
oddity. Someone somewhere made up the red bordered one to go along with the pins because the most, they're very rare, but the pins usually come with red enamel. But through the years, I picked up purple ones and even ones that are painted for World War II. Few people know that they exist, but that's what existed. And I picked up some of these in Europe because they must have brought them to the 47 World Jamboree to trade. So I picked up a few of these in Europe. So that's something you should know about.
Yeah,
Do you remember when you started?
when
When
I
you
first started
Got
in-
into this.
in 1984, a friend of mine from church, he's a teacher at a special needs school, and he worked at Camp Daniel Boone, and he said he wanted to start a troop at a special needs school. So I helped him out as an assistant scoutmaster, and I was a scoutmaster of a regular troop. And so I came to his school and helped him out, and he transferred from that school to another school. And in 1988, I told the school that I would become the scoutmaster at that point. So I did it from 88 until 2016.